thrilled to introduce our speakers. Dr. Karen Knopfel is a professor and former director of undergraduate programs in the Department of Psychology at Georgia Southern University, where she teaches introductory psychology, undergraduate and graduate research methods, health psychology, and cognitive psychology. She is the recipient of the 2010 Jane S. Hallinan, who is with us today, I just noticed, Early Career Teaching Award from the Society of Teaching Psychology. Dr. Knopfel is currently the chair of the APA Board of Educational Affairs and the former co-chair of APA's Committee on Associate and Baccalaureate Education, which is a good gig. In addition to serving on the BEA's task force to revise the APA guidelines for the undergraduate psychology major, which is why we're here today, she also served on the Introductory Psychology Initiative work group and was a significant contributor to the development of the Skillful Psychology students. All of those documents, by the way, can be found on the CABE website. We'll put that in the chat as we go forward. Dr. David Kreiner is a professor and the former chair of the School of Nutrition, Kinesiology, and Psychological Science at the University of Central Missouri, where he teaches general psychology, history of psychology, and advanced stats for the behavioral sciences. He has a long history of strong service to APA Division II, the Society for Teaching of Psychology, or STP. If you're not a member, consider joining, including having served as treasurer, coordinator of the departmental consulting services, and chair of the mid-career mentoring work group, which got Dave recognized with a presidential citation for his work there. He is currently serving on APA's Committee on Associate and Baccalaureate Education, in addition to serving on the BA task force for the APA guidelines for the undergraduate psychology major. Dave was a consultant on an NSF grant to APA aimed at supporting the implementation of APA's IPI. So I don't think I need to tell you anymore. We got some really good people here to share some great information with you, so I'm just going to hand it over to them.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And we are really excited to be here to talk about Guidelines 3.0 and what am I supposed to do with this document? So today we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do with the document. But before we get too far, I do want to recognize the amazing people that have worked on this document. So first, I do want to give a shout out to Jane Hallinan, who is on the call today. She has chaired this task force in addition to the other versions of the doc as well. Additionally, we have a group of wonderful people, many of them who are on the call right now. I see Garth, I see Susan on the call as now, and our amazing staff liaisons, Martha Bayanow and Susan Orsello, for all of their work on this document. So it's a lot of people who have worked on this. To get us started, I want to talk a little bit more broadly about why have guidelines? Why should we have guidelines at all? And so what guidelines for the undergraduate major are, they are a framework for what majors should be able to do upon graduation and at certain points in their education curriculum. They are not standards. Accreditation is not tied to them. So why bother having them? Well, one of the beautiful things about the guidelines is that they are aspirational in nature. And that they're aspirational in nature, they're also inspirational as well. So they can inspire conversations among faculty and among instructors about keeping the curriculum current, keeping the course work current, and making sure that it's meeting the needs of or looking at where the discipline of psychology is going. Additionally, it is also helpful for assessing to see if students are meeting goals that are expected of psychology majors. One of the other benefits that I've also found with having Guidelines 3.0 is that it helps frame the uniqueness of psychology and what a psychology major should be. Right now, we're experiencing a great cliff in enrollment. This is resulting in some programs starting to consolidate among with other social science programs. And in doing that, it's important to make sure that psychology as a major still has quality and is still meeting the goals. And this document can provide some insight to that. It is also helpful in terms of leveraging resources. And so faculty members can look at this, or a program can look at the guidelines, see where they are strong and areas that may need improvement, and use it to leverage resources to fill those areas where improvement may be needed. Additionally, another aspect of it that can also be quite helpful is it provides information about what the psychology curriculum could contain. For instance, I currently am in Georgia, and in Georgia, we do have academic freedom about what can be taught in the classroom, but there is a caveat that is attached to that phrase in our faculty handbook, as long as it relates to the discipline. It has that kind of caveat at the end. Well, one of the things about the guidelines is that it does provide that information about what is part of a psychology curriculum, should people question about, well, is this really a part of psychology or not? So there's lots of reasons that the guidelines can be helpful to psychology programs and psychology instructors. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to first start off by talking about what are the guidelines, giving a definition and going over some history. Then we're going to get into some what are the key features. Finally, we'll talk about how faculty can use the guidelines. In other words, we'll really get into the details of how you can use the document. So what exactly are the guidelines? So again, the guidelines are not standards, meaning that accreditation is not tied to them, is not, they are not required. Instead, they provide guidance on what majors should be able to do. It provides a framework for what students should be able to know, do, attitudes, abilities at the end of their educational career at the baccalaureate level, and also provides insight at the foundational level. These guidelines can have a large impact on programs in the United States for how curriculums could be designed. They can inspire curriculum design, they can inspire assessment, and they are quite helpful for program review for regional accreditation. So it can provide insight of whether or not the document is meeting certain goals or not, or whether the document can provide insight to if programs are meeting goals, staying current, and so on. Now, when we're talking about the guidelines, one of the things that I do want to point out is that the guidelines are not just created by a small group of people. In fact, the guidelines undergo significant amount of revision and feedback from lots of different entities along the way. So as an example, the first thing that we have here is kind of the stair step of process for how a bill becomes a law, so to speak, or how this draft becomes a part of APA policy. So we started off with the draft of the document, and in drafting that, the task force in drafting that document didn't got feedback from people who had used the document before. We had also got sought out feedback from others as we draft the document and made changes along the way. Once we had a draft of the document, it went to the APA's Board of Educational Affairs for approval for public comment. So that board reviewed it again before it got sent out for public comment. When it went out for public comment, there was a 60-day period in which the public had the opportunity to provide feedback on the document. And so this call went out to APA divisions, APA boards, APA membership, and so on. People had the opportunity to comment on the document itself. Once we get that 60-day period ended, we responded to every single public comment. And so all of the public feedback was addressed. We made the revisions, drafted it up, and sent it back to the Board of Educational Affairs for approval. Once they reviewed it and approved it, it went to the APA Board of Directors for approval. After they approved it, then it went to APA Council for a vote to become policy. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, one of the reasons is because we wanted to be transparent that this is not something that is developed by just a single group or a single entity, but there are constant points where we receive feedback and incorporated that feedback throughout. So it can really represent where the field is going and get input from a variety of perspectives. Sorry, my mouse stopped working all of a sudden. So there we are. Right. There we go. Additionally, one of the other things that we thought some people might want to hear is how has this Guidelines 3.0 changed from Guidelines 2.0? And so some things stay the same, some things change. And some of the things that have stayed the same is that it continues to be non-prescriptive. In other words, what that means is that it doesn't say exactly what should be covered in particular classes or in curriculums. And again, it also remains curriculum agnostic. And so again, it's not saying this course should be a part of the curriculum. It's not saying that. It allows for flexibility to accommodate all curriculums. There can still be, there are still 5 goals, although the titles did change, but there are still 5 goals that and additionally, we kept the 2 developmental levels where we have a foundational level, which is intended for about 2 years in a degree program, and then a baccalaureate level, which is about 4 years. Some of the changes that we have is we have the vision and philosophical principles, which I'll be going into more detail. Those include promotion of EDI, professional development, and ethical considerations. Additionally, we also included a call to action, and we'll be going through all of those in more detail later. We also included more on statistics and the outcomes itself. Guidelines 2.0, we got a lot of feedback that statistics was not being well represented in Guidelines 2.0, and so we enhanced that coverage in the outcomes in Guidelines 3.0. Additionally, something also that got integrated in the Guidelines 3.0 was the themes from APA's Introductory Psychology Student Learning Outcomes. APA's InterPsych Learning Outcomes contained some themes that could be integrated throughout the course. That was passed in 2021, and so we integrated those as well throughout the document and intentionally in Guidelines 3.0. So that provides a bit of an overview of what the guidelines is. And what we want to do now is we want to engage in some of the key features that Guidelines 3.0 has. Again, this includes the vision and philosophical principles, structure of learning expectations, attributes, and calls to action. So at the start, on the very first page of the guidelines document, one of the things that we have that is really exciting to us is this tagline, empowering people to make a difference in their lives and communities. One of the reasons that we have this is this really captures our vision. As we were working on this document in Guidelines 3.0, this theme kept coming up. We really believe that psychology had this amazing potential to help communities to transform, where people could use it to transform communities and society to make lives better. And we really wanted to capture that. And so we have this vision statement, empowering people to make a difference in their lives and communities, added to the guidelines to capture that. Additionally, one of the other features that we have is we also have the philosophical principles. The philosophical principles, these really informed our thoughts and our decisions and our processes as we revise the document. These philosophical principles can be helpful in interpreting the document, understanding the task force's reasoning for certain decisions in the document, and it really gives the sense of what we really hoped the document would reflect. So the philosophical principles, there are several of them, and the first one is, and it really captures what that vision is, that psychology should be transformative. Psychology is beautiful in that it can change things for the better, personally and professionally and academically. And so we really wanted, when we were writing up the learning outcomes, when we were writing up the editing the indicators, we really wanted that theme to permeate, that psychology really can make things better at different levels. The next philosophical one, and this one is one of my favorites, and I just love the sentence at the very beginning of it. We wanted psychology to be an inclusive discipline, and I love the sentence, every person is welcome to learn about psychology and cultivate the related skills. We really did want psychology to be for everyone, not something that's just only for a group of people, but we were really considering every person, and we wanted them to feel welcome to learn about psychology and apply it. Relatedly, we also wanted psychology in the document to reflect a contribution to a fair, just, and equitable society. Uh, it's a responsibility of psychology to use psychology to create a more just society. It's part of our current ethical principles for justice. And additionally, one of the beautiful things about psychology is that it can do this. Psychology studies human interaction. It studies justice, and it studies and it so it can be used. The research can be used to look at, well, how can we create more just, uh, more a more just society? And so that was another principle that was undergirded our decisions. We also had that psychology supported diversity of ideas and freedom of speech. And so this one appreciates that the cultural differences and individual differences in ideas and freedom of expression. Additionally, it's also important to note, and I find the sentence really strong, we were careful to avoid dictating what one should believe, but instead emphasize how psychological science and knowledge and skills may be applied to produce meaningful change. And so one of the things that we endorsed is the use of data-informed and critical thinking in order to make judgments in thinking. We also recognize that this document was an US based, a United States based, as it was part of the American Psychological Association. However, we wanted to encourage a globalized look at and the globalized look at psychology. And so this was also an important philosophical principle that we had that we integrated throughout the entire document to try not to isolate it to just Western educated, industrialized, but also have a more global focus uh, in looking at the discipline. Additionally, we also paralleled some of the expected changes for the APA ethics code that are underway. And one of those is the emphasis on ethical reasoning. So we didn't want students to just memorize a list of ethical standards. Instead, we really wanted to encourage ethical reasoning and ethical decision making, as ethical decision making is quite applicable and important in psychology and also in areas outside of psychology. And so that was something else that we considered as we edited the document. Since the last version, open science has also gained prominent, and the need for open science is also quite important. And so one of the things that we also did is we also promoted open science practices and integrated that into Guidelines 3.0. Specifically, we were promoting transparency, which can help with replicability of studies. And additionally, we also wanted to promote the idea that replication failures, those aren't necessarily a bad thing, but instead they allow for a critical examination of it allows for a critical examination of the theory, and it also allows for science to be self-correcting. And so we wanted to emphasize these themes of open science throughout the document. We also recognize the importance of history in psychology's history and talking about psychology's accomplishments and failures. This also includes teaching the historical background that psychology's historical role in promoting racism as well. These ideas should not be shied away from, but rather integrated into coursework in the curriculum. This one is also one of those that is kind of near and dear to me. This one is about preparing students for entering the workforce, which was also a very big theme and a very big consideration as we edited the document. So the majority of students who graduate with a psychology degree do not go on to graduate school. And it's important that all students have opportunities for success in graduate school or in the workforce when they graduate. And so we wanted to help promote the idea that and prepare students for the workforce. And so that is a theme that also appears throughout. And the final one is that we also recognized that there are a lot of misconceptions out there about psychology. There are a lot of myths that continue to persist. And we realized that it's important to correct these misconceptions about psychology And then we also recognize that we could empower students to also be ones that can correct these misconceptions as well, that they have, that they are able to correct these misconceptions about psychology and what it is. And so these philosophical principles are integrated in throughout the entire document. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dave Kreiner. He's going to talk about the structure of learning expectations.
All right, thank you, Karen. So Karen has been giving you some examples of some of the resources that are available in this guidelines document in terms of the vision and the philosophical principles. And I'm going to continue with that, highlighting some of the things to look for when you open up the document. The core of the guidelines document, I really think, is the learning expectations. What is it that we expect our psychology majors to be able to do at the time that they're finishing our programs? So I just wanted to give you an overview of how these learning expectations are structured in the guidelines and the type of terminology that we use. So we have three levels of the hierarchy in describing the learning expectations for the students. The broadest level is the level of goals. So we have 5 goal areas that are actually fairly similar to the goal areas in version 2.0. There are some changes, but the goal areas are really categories. They're really labels for domains of effort. So areas that psychology majors should be achieving in. If we go down one level of specificity from the goals, each goal has a number of outcomes. So the outcomes are more specific because they give you ideas for evidence that the goals have been achieved. So what is it that a student might do that would indicate that the student has achieved something under that particular goal area? Then, under the outcome level, we have the most specific level of the learning expectations hierarchy, which is the indicators. We think of indicators as teaching opportunities, or you could think of them as learning opportunities for students. So these are specific ways to illustrate that a student has achieved a particular outcome, which would then be evidence that the student had made progress in that particular goal area. So I want to give you an example, just kind of looking at one goal and one outcome under that goal, and then what the indicators look like, just so you can see how these three levels of the learning expectations sort of mesh together. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 goal areas in the latest version 3.0. As I said, they're pretty similar, but not exactly the same as the 5 goal areas in the previous version 2.0. But you'll notice again, these are labels. There's nothing in here that would indicate exactly how you should teach or how you should assess. These are just categories for what students should be able to accomplish. So what I'm going to do is focus in and kind of zoom in on goal area 2, scientific inquiry and critical thinking, just as an example, and we'll look at the outcomes that are listed under there. If you can go to the next slide. There we go. So that's goal 2. There's the label, scientific inquiry and critical thinking. The 2.1, 2.2, and so forth, those are outcomes. So that's the second level of the hierarchy. Those are areas where a student might demonstrate evidence that they have achieved in the general area of scientific inquiry and critical thinking. If we go down to the third level of the hierarchy, which is the indicators, we can see the 2 developmental levels. So what we're doing here is that 2.4, that was one of those outcomes that was listed on the last slide. So we're just continuing to zoom in and get more specific. So 2.4 is an outcome that is under the goal area of scientific inquiry and critical thinking. Use statistics to evaluate quantitative research findings. But this is just one of those outcomes, remember. And by the way, Karen mentioned earlier that one of the changes with 3.0 is that we were more specific about what the expectations were for statistical abilities. So that's one reason that we chose this particular example. What you'll notice on this slide is that the middle column is labeled foundation indicators. So remember, the indicators, those are specific teaching or learning opportunities. In other words, specific ways to look at whether a student has achieved that outcome level. The foundation level refers to, you could think of it as the first couple of years of a program. You could think of it as corresponding to the associate's level. And the way that we have organized this is we have corresponding indicators at the foundation level and then at the baccalaureate level. Baccalaureate, of course, corresponds to at the bachelor's level. So after completing your 4-year psychology degree. For each indicator at the foundation level, it's indicated with a lowercase letter like 2.4a, and then it has a corresponding indicator at the bachelor's level, which has the same numbering, but with a capital letter. And you'll notice that there's a correspondence there. And what we tried really hard to do is show how that particular ability or skill would develop as a student progresses through their degree program. So at the foundation level, a student might be able to describe different scales of measurement. And then later on in the program at the baccalaureate level, they're able to actually apply that knowledge of scales of measurement to propose what level of measurement might be used for a particular research purpose. So that's the structure of the learning expectations. We have 5 goals. Under each goal, we have a number of outcomes, and under each outcome, we have indicators at both the foundation level and the baccalaureate level. Next slide, please. One of the other key features that we want people to know about in terms of the guidelines is that after each of the goal areas where we have all of these outcomes and indicators listed, there's a list of terms that we call attributes. And these can be really handy in a number of ways. These are basically just adjectives to describe a student who has achieved in that particular goal area, who has met those outcomes in that particular goal area. So these attributes, for example, might be useful for a student describing what they're able to do to an employer, perhaps in their cover letter or in their resume, perhaps in an interview. And so we have these attributes for each of the 5 goal areas. So we wanted to draw your attention to that because these can be useful to you as a faculty member, can be useful to draw your students' attention to these attributes so they can think about how should they be after they have mastered or made progress in that particular goal area. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about what is in the document. We have the vision, we have philosophical principles. The core of it, as I said, is really the learning expectations, but that's not all. This is where we get to the sort of infomercial part of the webinar. That's not all. How much would you pay now? One of the things I think is really cool about the guidelines document is in the latter part of the document, we have sections that are actually called putting the guidelines into action, that are basically calls to action, things that you can do based on the guidelines. And I'm certainly not going to try to comprehensively go through these different sections, but you see in there what those call to action sections correspond to. And that might give you some really good ideas about how this guidelines document could actually be useful to you. Each of those call to action sections has advice for you as a faculty member and you as a program about how you can apply the guidelines to improve what you're doing for your students. So just to give you a couple of examples about what we mean by calls to action and what you can potentially find in there. That first example, how to do curriculum planning. There's some advice in there about how your program or your department might go about planning meetings, using the information in the guidelines, making decisions about your curriculum, how to do assessment, those types of things. We have a call to action section about implications for community colleges. So how can community colleges or junior colleges, how can they use the guidelines to improve the courses that they're offering, to improve an associate's degree they might be offering, and particularly to connect with those four-year colleges as well as with employers. We have a section on the teaching of intro psych and high school psychology. There's a call to action section with suggestions for how to approach that workforce readiness issue that Karen pointed out earlier as one of our philosophical principles in writing this version of the guidelines that, as Karen pointed out, not all of our students are going to graduate school, and certainly not all going to graduate school in psychology. In fact, most of them are going into the workforce. We have some suggestions in there for how faculty can tackle that issue and use the guidelines to help better prepare your students for the workforce. Open science and new statistics, we really made that a priority in revising the guidelines. There's some advice in there about how to approach that. Just as an example of the type of advice that's in there. That's one of the areas that I teach. I teach our statistics and research method sequence. I'm an old school kind of guy. Literally, the new statistics had not been invented when I was in school. And so for faculty who are like me, where you're kind of used to the old way of doing things, how do you make progress toward incorporating open science principles and moving away from 100% emphasis on null hypothesis significance testing? There's some advice in there. Take a look at that section. We have sections on international implications, and we have a section with advice about how to improve how programs handle equity, diversity, and inclusion. So great resources in there, a lot of material to read and think about and discuss with your colleagues. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about what the guidelines are. We've talked about some things that are in the guidelines document. The third part of this webinar, we want to give you some ideas about ways you can actually use the guidelines. And so when Karen and I planned this, we came up with 4 sort of categories of ways that you could use the guidelines in terms of helping with your degree program, design, making decisions about your curriculum, in terms of your assessment procedures, helping individual faculty make improvements in the courses that they teach, and also directly for students. How can the guidelines be of help to students? So we're going to take a look at each of those 4 areas, and I'll give you a few ideas, again, that I hope are food for further thought. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of using the guidelines to help you with curriculum planning, hopefully you're familiar with the concept of backward design. It's definitely a useful procedure when you're thinking about designing your course, but we hope that faculty are thinking about designing their programs with the idea in mind of what should our students be able to do at graduation, rather than picking particular courses you want your student to take and then trying to figure out what learning outcomes they're achieving. So think about the goal first. What are the outcomes you want your students to achieve? And clearly, the guidelines document is a great resource for helping a program work through what their program student learning outcomes should be. In terms of making curriculum decisions, the guidelines can also be helpful in thinking about course sequencing. What courses come early in your program? What courses come later? What courses should have prerequisites? And even apart from those structural types of things, those 2 levels of indicators that I mentioned earlier, the foundational level and then the baccalaureate level, that can help you in your program think about how upper level courses can be building on the skills that students start to develop in the lower level courses. In the same way, those two levels of the indicators can help a lot with transfer decisions. And this is something that's really helpful with curriculum design, both for our colleagues who are at community colleges and for those of us who are at four-year institutions offering bachelor's degrees. So if you're at a community college, you can be thinking, how can we show that the courses that we're offering here in psychology should be matching up in terms of those two levels of indicators with what psychology majors should be progressing into when they transfer to a four-year university and start working on the bachelor's part of their program. In the same way, for those of us at the four-year universities offering the bachelor's programs, those two levels of the indicators can be really helpful in helping us make reasonable decisions about what courses should transfer in to count for the courses that we offer, rather than just sort of arbitrarily making decisions like, oh, we want all of our students to take all the courses here. If they've already met the outcomes that you have designated, then that can really ease the transfer and it can help the students as they go from a two-year to a four-year. Karen also mentioned one of the changes from 2.0 to 3.0 is that we have added the themes, which we sort of borrowed from the Introductory Psychology Initiative, with the thought that those themes could tie together not just the different chapters in an intro psych course, but could tie together the different areas in psychology as a discipline. So you might think, as you're revising your program, or if you're developing a program, how can you help students see how the different topics in your major actually have some underlying threads that tie them together? Take a look at those 7 themes. And then final thought about designing a strong curriculum: academic program reviews. So many of us have an expectation, sometimes on a particular cycle, that our program will undergo a program review, either internally at our institution or sometimes with an external reviewer. By the way, Des mentioned in my introduction about the STP's departmental consulting service. Great way to identify external program reviewers. Those external program reviewers can, and in my opinion, should be looking at Guidelines 3.0 to help them evaluate your program. And this can, of course, also be a basis for the program asking for input from an external reviewer. So those are some thoughts about using the guidelines to help you improve your curriculum. Next slide, please. So a second area where we think the guidelines can be helpful to you is in terms of improving your assessment practices. One of the key things about having a good assessment program is that you're measuring assessment data that are meaningful, that are useful to you as program faculty, rather than just collecting data in order to check out boxes and meet some kind of standard for a report that you have to submit that goes off into the ether somewhere. So how do you know if you're collecting meaningful assessment data? Well, they're meaningful if they relate to your program goals. And those program goals, as I mentioned earlier, a good basis for them is to look at what the goals and the outcomes and the indicators are in APA Guidelines 3.0. A more specific thought about identifying your degree program goals. One of the things that we have kind of wrestled with in my particular department, if you look at those 3 levels of the learning expectations that I talked about earlier, where we have the broad goal areas, and then under them we have outcomes, and under the outcomes we have indicators. For us at my particular university, programs are expected to have about 5 to 7 student learning outcomes. So you might think, okay, 5 program goals, that's perfect. Except remember, in the APA guidelines, the goal areas are really categories. They're labels They're not written in a way that's intended for the goal areas to be directly accessible. So you can decide what's appropriate for your program. Does it work for you to translate those goal areas into sort of accessible language? And that's what we've done in my program. We've kind of written them out using some help from the outcomes to make the 5 goals our student learning goals for the program. Or depending on your program, you might want to look at those outcomes at the next level in the hierarchy and use some of those for your degree learning outcomes. So whatever suits your particular program. One of the key things about assessment is a team effort pretty much always works better than if you have one assessment person who takes on all of the responsibility. If everybody has a stake in the assessment process, it's going to work much better and you're more likely to have meaningful assessment data. Going back to what I said earlier about those call to action sections, there's some advice in there about how you can make it a team effort and even some ideas about if perhaps you have some faculty in your program who are a little bit less enthusiastic about assessment. There's some advice in there about how to encourage them to participate in that assessment process. Next slide. Okay. A resource we want to highlight that we think can really help you with assessment. APA has this resource that's called Project Assessment, or PASS, and you can see the web address is there in the lower left. This has particular assessment methods that have been tried by your colleagues at different institutions, and they're organized by the goal areas. Our wonderful APA staff has worked a lot on revising project assessment, so it matches up with the current version 3.0 of the guidelines. If your program is trying to figure out, well, how could we assess goal 5 or how could we assess goal 3? This is a great resource to go and find some things that are already out there rather than you having to reinvent the wheel. So I just wanted to put the plug in for project assessment. Next slide. Okay. Another area where the guidelines can be helpful is for individual faculty in teaching their own courses. So one way you can do this is you can look at the outcome level and you can look at the indicators, and those can give you some good ideas about how to write and how to structure your course level learning outcomes. We would also love it if when you teach your courses, you think about those philosophical principles that Karen highlighted earlier. And I just listed a couple here, like going with the vision for the guidelines that psychology should be transformative and it should help people help themselves and their communities. Think about what you're doing in your courses that can communicate the transformative and the inclusive nature of the discipline to your students. Think about, in terms of that inclusive principle, what you can do intentionally as you teach your courses to make your course feel accessible and welcome to everybody, and not just thinking about avoiding discriminating, but sort of proactively thinking about how to be accessible to everybody, how to be inclusive. One of the philosophical principles was about psychology being a global discipline. As Karen mentioned, these are the APA guidelines. It's not meant to be necessarily a global standard for everybody to meet. But even those of us teaching in the United States, we have to recognize psychology is a global discipline. Psychologists are all over the world. Psychological science is done all over the world. One of the ways you can use the guidelines to improve your courses is to think about how you can globalize your course syllabus, how you can select readings that better represent the global nature of the discipline, even how you can use a broader range of examples when you're teaching that better represent the nature of the discipline. Next slide. Okay, so last area in terms of ways that you can use the guidelines is that you can use them to help your students. So one way is when we're recruiting students or when we're advising students on whether the psychology major is a good choice for them, the guidelines can be a great resource to articulate to them, this is what you would be learning to do. And going back to those attributes, this is the kind of person that the psychology major will transform you into being. Workforce readiness and grad school preparation. Think about how students are progressing towards skills that employers actually want or that graduate schools want their incoming students to be able to do. One of the things you can do to help students is direct them specifically to what those learning expectations are in Guidelines 3.0 and help them practice explaining to other people and documenting what it is that they're able to do as a psychology major that perhaps other majors are not able to do or not able to do to that extent. And then one more example about how the guidelines can be helpful to students. Goal 5 is about personal and professional development. We mention in there things like self-regulation and collaboration skills. Sometimes I think people think of these as being soft skills. I would like to suggest that we think about these and present them to our students as hard skills in the sense that they're actually really hard to learn, right? And they're also really important for success because all the knowledge in the world is not really going to help a student be successful if they're not able to regulate their behavior or if they're not able to collaborate well with other people. And so that message to students can really help set them up for success. So we hope that this has given you some ideas about how you can actually use all of these resources that are in the guidelines to help you at the program level, to help you in terms of assessment, help you with teaching your courses, and certainly to help your students be more successful. So winding up big picture, the guidelines document contains expectations for what students should be able to do when they complete their psychology major, but that's not all. There's a wealth of resources in the guidelines, and we really hope we've given you some ideas about how you can use those resources. I do want to underline again, as Karen mentioned, these are guidelines, these are not standards. They are certainly not meant for accreditation purposes. The idea, big picture, is that this document is meant to be a resource for you as a psychology educator. And I hope we have got that message across to you. So thank you all for being here for the webinar. There is the QR code and the link again if you didn't already grab the guidelines document. We hope that you'll do that. We also have another slide that has a link to CABE and CABE resources. And Des mentioned in the introduction about what CABE is. So there's some great information there. Thank you all for being here.